Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about a long-awaited topic, but I wanted to make sure I had everything just right before making the video, and that is the Death's Head Roach breeding guide. Yes, the beautiful jet black Blaberus craniifer. This video should cover everything you need to know to pick these guys up and start running with them. But first, I want to mention I have an eBay store with a few items up, and second, I have a Facebook group that is slowly growing. Links in the description for both. And with that out of the way, let's start the video. First on the list is Enclosure. I go a slightly different route with these guys than I do discoids, and that is I use a 30-gallon glass enclosure instead for a few reasons. First, I wanted to be able to view inside the enclosure as these guys are being kept as pets instead of feeders. Second, glass transfers heat a whole lot better than plastic does, since I wanted to keep their soil at a minimum of 80 degrees Fahrenheit at all times. Since Death's Head roaches require high humidity, having heated soil will help create that humidity. I take the top grated lid that I have and take packing tape and place layer by layer over the top until I have most of it covered. I left one large vent for air to circulate. Since the bottom of the tank is heated, it will escape and draw in fresh air. You can forego this completely and use a plastic storage container and cut vents into it to give some restricted airflow, like I did with discoid roaches when I first got them. I just more or less wanted to be able to see inside the enclosure for these guys. Anyhow, let's move on to substrate. You can honestly use a variety of substrate mixes. I suggest anything that would be fine to use with isopods. I do not like recommending products like this though, so you will have to do your own homework for which brand to buy. They are all, for the most part, fine, and it just depends on what you want to do. Coco Coir honestly should be fine. The roaches don't gain a whole lot from a fancy substrate. Sure, they eat some things like insect grass and possibly attain other nutrients from it, but you will be supplementing their diet, so it's not super important. I personally wanted to put isopods with mine, so I mixed up some, I'll admit, poor substrate, but it's doing the job for now. The substrate is mainly used to hold moisture. Since the roaches require 60 to 80% humidity to remain healthy, you need some type of medium to retain it. They also like to dig around in the soil, so 2 to 3 inches deep is suggested at a minimum. It is not entirely uncommon to see your roaches digging in the soil, especially if you startle them. The roach nymphs also like to dig around in the soil, and that is where they will spend a good portion of their lives before they start climbing out of the soil and hanging out with the adults. The only thing I will suggest against is potting soil. Avoid it completely unless it's organic and contains no plant food, no fertilizers, nothing like that. As mentioned earlier, the roaches don't really need anything from a fancy substrate as you will be feeding them other things, more on this later, so something as simple as Coco Coir is fine. Alright guys, let's get a little bit more in depth with heat and humidity. If you have ever kept isopods or any critter that requires high humidity such as springtails, you will have a good understanding on how you want to keep these animals. You want to keep the airflow of the enclosure rather restricted to retain as much humidity as you can within reason. 60 to 80% is ideally what we are looking for. Since I heat my tank from the bottom, it keeps the substrate warm and causes water to evaporate quicker, which builds up a nice humid condition for the roaches. And speaking of heat, the ideal temperature range for Death's Head roaches is the same as discoid roaches, which is 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I heat my substrate between 83 and 84 degrees Fahrenheit. This seems to be enough for my roaches. Ideally, we want to keep our humidity above 60% for the roaches. While I do not track the humidity within the enclosure itself, I do regular mistings and that seems to be enough for the roaches and isopods. Let's move on to diet. Like most roaches, most veggies and greens are perfectly fine to use. Things like kale, sweet potatoes, carrots, collard greens, mustard greens, and many other things including fruit like apples, bananas, and oranges are fine to use. Do keep in mind that citrus is toxic to some animals like leopard geckos or even isopods, and if you intend on using these guys as feeder insects, you may want to forego citrus items altogether depending on what type of animal you want to keep them with or feed them to. For dry food, I personally feed them wheat bran. I've had great success with their cousins, the discoid roach, and I found that these guys absolutely love it as well. Wheat bran can be obtained cheaply in bulk compared to buying formulated food specifically for roaches, which you could just buy other products like pig pellets or rabbit pellets and grind them up. Most roach chows contain mostly the same ingredients, and I have safely used them as an alternative in the past. Now I just go with the most simple, wheat bran, and that contains absolutely nothing else other than the actual product. It is more than nutritious enough for your roaches when paired with other things like fruits and veggies. I mostly raise mine on carrots, sweet potatoes, and collards, as they are the most affordable items packed with a good amount of nutrients. By a colony of 20 plus adults and hundreds of nymphs will eat about 1 sweet potato a week or about half a bundle of collard greens. If you have critters in your enclosure like isopods and springtails, they will help cut down on food molding. I go against my normal advice when it comes to this type of enclosure and the other animals I've paired with the roaches. I do not remove food. I let it completely break down or get eaten. Between the roaches, isopods, and springtails, nothing gets left over. So my roaches always have food readily available to them, be it dry or fresh. If you do not set up your enclosure like mine with isopods and springtails, you may have to remove leftover food between feedings to prevent mold. I highly suggest carrots and sweet potatoes because they last a long time before rotting or molding in a humid environment. Next up on the list is the extras for their enclosure, like hides and sticks and other things for them to climb on. I have been gathering sticks from the hardwood trees in the area around my house. I do not have enough for them yet, but I fully intend on having their enclosure, for the most part, full of sticks so that the death's head roaches have plenty of things to climb on and perch. I think they perch. I'm not really sure what to call it. I'm not sure what they are doing, but they like to climb out and hang off the floor of the enclosure once they become large nymphs, so things for them to climb on adds some quality to their lives. These roaches love the dark. They are very sensitive to light and will react to it. It has been part of the challenge of videoing these guys and why this video isn't on par with my discoid roach videos. I almost have to remove them from the enclosure to get good shots, otherwise they run and dig or hide beneath the sticks. Another good thing to add to their enclosure are things like reptile hides, if you happen to have any extra laying around. Since my leopard geckos have gotten too big for the skull, I use it as a sort of centerpiece to pile all the sticks on. These roaches love hanging out in it. For the longest, these guys were mainly using this hide until I added more sticks. They were densely packed in there. I can't say this is the most optimal thing to do, but this is what I'm doing, and so far, I've had them since they were nymphs and they are all adults now and breeding. Now let's talk a little bit about nymphs, and I have a ton of them. They look very similar to discoid and dubia roach nymphs, and without a trained eye and a bit of experience, it's honestly hard to tell the three apart. When I first got these guys, I struggled to tell them from discoid roaches. The nymphs take about 8 months from my estimate to reach winged adults. I don't have exact numbers, and the info about them on the internet is pretty sparse and somewhat contradictory. Some sources say one thing, others say another. In my experience, it took about 6 months from the day I got them, which they had already been about 2 months old from their size. They grow a little slower than discoid roaches and a lot slower than dubia roaches. Their behavior is pretty similar to other feeder roach species, however they are very shy and a lot more wild than dubia or discoid roaches. It does not take much to startle them. And finally, we have the roaches and how to breed them. Males and females. Guys, that's it. If you followed everything in this guide, as far as how to set up their enclosure, their heat, humidity, soil, hide, things to climb on, and their diet, these guys will breed. Now as far as where to get them, that is going to be up to you. You may find someone local, but you will most likely have to look online. There tends to be this taboo thing about using eBay in the insect keeping community. I personally have used eBay for almost every bug I keep, but that's me. I will eventually have them up on my eBay store, so check in the future. But there is nothing to breeding these guys if you meet their conditions and keep them healthy. One thing to note, depending on where you live, you may need a permit for this type of roach. You do not need permits in Florida to own them, but you do need a permit to sell them, which is why they are not currently up on my eBay store. Once I get it all figured out and get the permit, they will be up for sale. But be aware, if you are wanting to get these guys to sell them, you need to check your local laws for this roach. And that about does it, guys. I tried to make this one a little shorter than the other longer form content I have put out this past year. Tell me what you think about it in the comments. If you like this video and have it in your critter loving heart, give this video a like, a subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more videos in the future like this. And as always, from the critters and I, have a wonderful day.